So yeah, if we just want to do, why don't we start with introductions and then we can do a quick round of announcements and then get into it with Cynthia here. You can go first too. I am Gina Fiorelli-Duranlo. I am the program coordinator for CLEAN, the Climate Literacy and Energy Awareness Network, and I host these calls every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern on various topics. I also work remotely from Vermont, but CLEAN is part of a series at University of Colorado Boulder. And I'll popcorn it to Ingrid.
Hi, Ingrid Zabel. I'm with the Paleontological Research Institution in Ithaca, New York. We're affiliated with Cornell University, and we have a small natural history museum and a nature center. So I work in non-formal education in those settings with a focus on climate change. And I will send it to Lynn.
Hey, everybody. Lynn Pinder. I wear multiple hats. I teach a GED class with my church, and that's what got me interested in being a part of this group to get some support as an adult educator. But I also am a co-founder for a nonprofit called Baltimore Green Justice Workers Cooperative, and I'm based in Baltimore, Maryland. And I will popcorn it to Cynthia.
Good morning. I'm so glad to learn about this group. I didn't know about it. So I'm Cynthia out of San Francisco in California, where it's morning and a little chilly for us here. I have worked many years in education, primarily adult education, but also K-12. And for a while now, I've been trying to connect, Tinder up the worlds of sustainability and climate with adult education. So that's really what I'm focused on now. So I will popcorn to James.
Great, thank you, Cynthia. I'm James Callahan with Mobile Climate Science Labs and climatechangeeducation.org. Two of the things that I work on is I co-teach the two most advanced and in-depth classes in K-12 schools in the United States. We would like to be able to more list off the others that are right with us. So we're always looking at who else is teaching, not just a few hours or 10 hours, but we're going 5 days a week in classes that are not only on climate science, but climate action. Both are in Washington, D.C. And one is at Lowell School, and the other is Bard High School Early College in Southeast D.C. And how about, in the interest of people I haven't met, I don't believe yet before, I'm going to go with Scott because I'm interested in who Scott is.
Thank you, James. I'm Scott Lewis down in South Florida here with the Florida Climate Educators Network in the state of Florida, and interest in both formal and informal education. So this is my first time I've been on this network. So glad to be here today. And I'm going to pass it to Carolyn over at Clio.
Sorry, I was just in the middle of my coffee there. Hi, everyone. So good to see you all. New and old faces alike. My name is Carolyn Burns, she, her. I'm the Education and Curriculum Manager for the CLEW Institute, which is a nonprofit headquartered in South Florida. We do education, advocacy, climate policy, and a lot of work with student organizations. I'm headquartered in Tallahassee, and we are expected to hit freezing temperatures this evening. So I have some feelings about the Sunshine State and how it is currently not living up to that name. I'm so sorry. Melissa, have you gone yet? All right, in which case I am passing it over to you, and yeah, have a good day.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Melissa Rummel. I work at the UCAR Center for Science Education based out of Boulder, Colorado. And I'm an education designer. We work mostly in informal science, but also design a lot of educational resources for all K-12 educational audiences. there anyone else that needs to go?
I haven't gone yet. If no one else has. Oh, Carrie hasn't either.
Carrie.
My name is Carrie Herndon. I am the curriculum specialist for the National Center for Science Education. We work defending what are considered to be socially controversial, but not scientifically controversial subjects in the classroom. Climate change, evolution, and the nature of science are our bread and butter. Yeah, and I'm just excited to be here. Katie, I guess, is next.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Boyd. I am the Clean Program Manager, and then am based at Series Education and Outreach, and do some work on some other projects as well as an evaluator. I use she, her pronouns. I'm based in the Boulder, Colorado area, which is the traditional lands of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Ute. And it's nice to see you all today. Thanks for being here. And I came on a little late, so I'm actually not sure. Is everyone else gone, or is there anyone else that needs to introduce themselves?
We're good.
I think we got it as long as we know who Gina is, which I
Yeah.
think.
Yes, I will always continue to introduce myself. And sorry, Lynn, I don't mean to be taking your job, but I'll just say maybe we can do a quick round of announcements and then we can get into it with Cynthia. Again, I'll go first. I just wanted to mention a couple of things with Clean. I shared yesterday on the, or no, a while ago on the listserv, the some of the follow-up items from our Excel summit a couple weeks ago. The recording is available. We just actually put it on our website, and Katie put it on our website, and there are 6 working groups that everyone, whether you attended or not, is welcome and encouraged to join. So I'm going to put the links for both of those things in the chat. If you haven't already signed up for a working group and you're interested in doing that, please consider. Another thing, oh yeah, thank you, Katie. Another thing is that yesterday I sent out an email about the AGU fall meeting that's happening in San Francisco in a couple of weeks. Clean will be there in person. And I just wanted folks to know that we do have a few sessions that are happening. I sent out a link to a document with climate literacy related sessions too. So a list of the Clean sessions and other sessions that you might find interesting. And then that week, it's Tuesday, it'll be Tuesday the 12th. The Clean call will be dedicated to AGU. We'll have anyone that's joining or not joining the conference can hop on and talk about, you know, experiences, takeaways, that type of thing. And we'll have an in-person meetup as well. And I'll put all the information to that in the chat. Other announcements.
Well, I've got one. This is Scott Lewis from Florida Climate Education Network, Educators Network. I'm going to drop in the chat room a flyer for a presentation we've got tomorrow evening with Megan Ennis, Wednesday evening. And welcome to join that one. It's on evidence-based approaches to climate education. So I think this group would probably be very interested in that.
Thank you. Awesome. And Jim, I know your hand's up.
Yes, thank you, Gina. So I just tag as well for the AGU conference on the next day. Thursday is the other part of the education section, which is the Bright Stars, high school students and middle school students from around the world. It's going to be very heavy on climate education and action, and many of those come from students that I supervise. That'll be in there. So there'll be quite a lot going on from younger people working with scientists also at AGU. And just as a thing, if I don't want to take time away from Lynn any further, but know that, Lynn, we do have a placeholder for your work at AGU in San Francisco. If anyone's there, I have a presentation that has a place for you to, the way it works at AGU is if you want to use our space to talk about and meet people about what you're doing, it's there. Okay, so that's on Wednesday. That'll be that place.
Notes. we can keep using the chat if anything else comes up, but otherwise, I'll let Lynn and Cynthia, start talking about what they are doing and, share their experiences and thoughts.
Thanks, everybody. I think I've expressed time and time again how much I really appreciate having the opportunity to be part of this network, to be able to get the insight, even from the K through 12 perspective. As an adult educator, a lot of the lessons that I know I use in my GED program and a lot of my colleagues use are from all that time. I'm just talking and talking and talking, and you all can't hear me. So I'll start over again. Thank you.
I think we just lost about a sentence.
Yeah,
or
we heard most of it. Just lost you at the end there, Lynn.
Okay. So most of my colleagues, I know we resort to K through 12 curriculum to help us as we are, devising our own curricula for our programs. And so to be part of this network where there's an intense focus on climate change, and that's something that I definitely had an interest in trying to incorporate climate change education into the adult education programming, whether it was at my church or at the community college where I sometimes teach. And as I was doing research, I came across Cynthia on LinkedIn, and she's posting like all of this cool stuff about what she's doing in her adult ed class around climate change. And so I'm reaching out to her and so excited. And so I just thought when I was asked to host the session, I asked, was it okay to kind of focus on why I even came to this group, because I was looking for support to be able to infuse some of what you're sharing in the K through 12 education world, in the adult ed world. And I was told, yeah. So I reached out to Cynthia and asked her if she would do a presentation based on something that I saw her share on LinkedIn. And she graciously accepted. And so I'm really excited. I'm going to just kind of share a little bit about Cynthia. She's taught English as a second language, parent education, memoirs, and more to older adults. She's created content. She's authored blogs. She's managed social media and websites. She's supported student leadership and voice, and she co-founded Green Team at San Mateo Adult and Career Education. She has advocated for adult education via the California Council for Adult Education, SMACE, the California Federation of Teachers, and other grassroots groups, Adult Education Matters blog, and social media. Additionally, Cynthia taught as a substitute teacher and worked as an artist in the schools and in after-school arts programs in San Francisco in the K through 12 system. She loves education and sustainability because they support and celebrate life, community, and renewal. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Cynthia. And again, I just want to thank you for graciously accepting the invitation. And I think that you would be a great fit for this group, even beyond your presentation today. I think this would be a great resource for the work that you're doing in San Francisco.
Well, thank you so much, Lynn. Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, I'm really excited about this group. I didn't know about it, so I'm really glad to be here and learn what you all are doing. I'm guessing that you know something about adult education via Lynn, or do you want a little more information from me? Raise your hand if you want more info. I see one hand. Okay. Yeah, so I think adult ed is sort of the hidden treasure in the public education system. It offers, and it's kind of different, I notice, in different parts of the country. High school diploma and GED are a very important part of adult education. Job training for anybody 18 and over, and English as a second language for immigrants. So in California, it's more than half ESL. In other parts of the country, I think it's more focused on GED and high school diploma, and the job training is throughout. So it's often not only hidden, but underfunded. It's generally federally funded. In California, it's primarily state funded, but we experienced severe cuts after the Wall Street crash of 2008 and 9. We're still funded at less than what we were before. So that's how I got into all the advocacy. And that's because adult ed is often hidden and because it is often underfunded, it makes it even harder to have access to things like climate literacy programs or to be, we're not usually at the table when it comes to policy and planning for climate literacy. So I've done a lot of things on my own to educate myself, get training, get education, make connections. I'm no longer actively teaching. I stopped teaching because I'm caregiver to my mom. She's in a different part of the house and hopefully doesn't need anything during this. And I have started a group that meets every couple of months on Zoom and shares information. It's mostly California oriented, but we also have folks across the country in adult education who want to make sustainability and climate literacy part of adult education. But even folks who are doing that, who are, there's a lot of obstacles in the way. It's not easy because the information just isn't out there and people aren't thinking of us. So let me share my screen and get to the presentation that Lynn was talking about. And, I can't see everybody when I'm presenting, but wave your hand wildly, or if somebody has a question, please say something. Yeah. So this is a presentation I gave to, I always forget what the acronym stands for, but it's the American Association of Adult and Continuing Education. That was it a few months ago, about why adult education should be and really is a partner in climate work. All right, I kind of already covered. So yeah, this is me. I've been an adult ed a long time. I've also worked in the K-12 system, currently caregiving my mom. Something that I was thinking about this morning and thinking about talking today is my grandmother started teaching in one-room schoolhouses in the Ozarks as a widow in her 20s. She was also an artist. She was a real powerhouse of a person, as you might guess, just on that little mini description. She would never let me have coloring books. She was real big on, no, you need to learn to draw and no coloring books are allowed. So I am somebody that kind of often sees things outside the lines and sees how things connect, which can be good or bad when you're working inside of the, public education system. But I do see where things connect. And something that I often think about is how in Western science and in education, things are often separated out. And there's a lot of value in that. I understand there's value in, I'm now working with people who are dyslexic and they're 8 years old, or I'm now looking at lizards and I'm not looking at squirrels. But things also connect. And when I'm teaching in adult education, I'm teaching people who are members of families. I'm teaching parents, I'm teaching grandparents, I'm teaching children, I'm teaching, right? We educate each other, we're connected to each other. So for me, it's very important that adult education is included when we do climate work, because I don't know, it varies in different states, but in California, and I meant to look up this statistic because it's not fresh in my mind. I think it's at least 40% of children in the K-12 system in California are the children of immigrants. So if we want to reach and connect with those kids and offer them the best education possible, we need to also reach and connect with their parents. And oftentimes that's through the adult education system. So I don't think that it serves us as human beings to constantly separate ourselves out. Does that make sense? So 2 ideas that I think are crucial is that adult education needs to integrate climate education into all of its programs. And also it needs to be integrated into any planning around climate education, curriculum, all of that. And right now, I think it just isn't in mind when people are creating curriculum. So oftentimes, if you want to include that, if you're an adult educator, you will go to like a high school curriculum, but there isn't a lot that's for us. So I'm actually working right now on creating a curriculum for high-level ESL students on what is a naturalist and what jobs could, if your interest in nature, what job pathways that could lead to. So adult learners, all right, now I will have to confess that I'm a terrible time manager and I meant to set my visual timer. So I'm going to belatedly set it for myself here. All right. Adult learners are really in the, as I say here, in the crosshairs of climate change. We're all facing climate change, every one of us. Oftentimes, the folks that adult education serves are especially vulnerable. I'm thinking that this is something that this group is already aware of. So I won't go into that in too great a detail, but that's a very real thing. These are just a few of the direct impacts on adult schools in California that have happened in the last few years. Some of you, prior to the Maui fire, the fire with the greatest human cost was the fire up in Paradise in Northern California. My daughter was going to school up there at the time. And that impacted the area in so many ways. I mean, not only the human life cost, but the smoke. I used to check the air now, that's the government air rating. I'd be like, oh my God, it's 500 today. And I'd be like calling my daughter, are you using the air filters I sent you? Please wear your mask. And that was just throughout the area for a really long time. So I think when people think about the fires that we have in the West, I'm sure the woman from Colorado is aware of this. It's not only the immediate area, but the smoke, the impact on health is really huge. There's also been a lot of flooding problems in California. Our infrastructure isn't ready for all of that. Power outages are a big problem in California. I don't know if they are as big of a problem elsewhere. Extreme heat, huge problem in general. Public education system not ready for it. We do have snow in California. I don't think people think about it, but we have something called the Sierra Nevada, which means snowy mountains in English. And we do have schools in snowy areas. And last year, Tahoe was, you might have seen pictures, it was just insane. And of course, drought, and lots and lots and lots of water issues. So as my mom taught me, water is the real goal of California. So as I'm guessing, again, this group already knows, climate change is a magnifier. It's a magnifier of all the other problems that we're facing and how it impacts folks and worsens all the other issues. One good thing about California, and I know that we're kind of famous for being a leader in climate work, and we are, and I deeply appreciate it. So there's a lot of resources that I can turn to when I'm dealing specifically with California. So for example, this is the California Climate Adaptation Guide, and it is chock full of information and is wonderful. I don't know how many states have that. I'm interested, if you want to put a note in the chat, I could read it later. If your state has its own climate adaptation guide, I would really like to know. So this goes into who is the most vulnerable in climate. They didn't include gender, which I thought was pretty significant because gender is a big factor in all this too. I mean, if you just think about being pregnant in an extreme heat episode is a big deal. But that's a great chart that they made. And so kind of based on that, I made my own chart of looking at who we serve in adult education and who is the most climate change vulnerable. And the crossover area here is very big. Am I going too fast? Or,
I think this is good.
okay, thank
Yeah.
you. I know that this is not like that new for folks, so except for the adult education aspect.
It's great.
Okay, thank you. So something else I always like to stress too is coming from the perspective of what we have to offer and not just what we need. And I think people sometimes also don't think about the fact that adult learners may not only be vulnerable, but also have so much to offer in terms of climate solutions. So who we serve in adult education really varies. You know, over my years of teaching, I might have somebody who had deep knowledge of plants from their life in their home country, but they never actually went to school, or they went to school until the 3rd grade. Or I might have somebody who was a medical doctor in their country, or I might have somebody who had postponed going to ESL classes because they were raising their family. So who they are really varies, but every single student I had knew a lot about something. And I really feel that in terms of dealing with climate, we need every resource, we need every knowledge base, we need all this stuff. And we definitely need more language access in climate information. That, in my opinion, I've seen is really, really lacking. So for example, in the climate action plans in California that are by city or county, there are a few that are translated, like the one for Salinas is in English and in Spanish, their website and their climate action plan, but mostly they're not. And if we want to engage people, we have to engage people where they are and how they are, right? So it's crucial that we have more information translated. I don't know, are you all familiar with climate cardinals? Anybody want to raise their hand? Yes, no. So Climate Cardinals was started by a woman at Stanford, a student, and they translate climate information into just a gigantic number of languages. You can submit something to them and they'll translate it. It's a really wonderful thing. So this is just sort of a recap of, just gonna move this thing up here, of what I've covered, that, you know, adult education is a partner in climate conversations because of how climate impacts everything and how much adult education has to offer, and that we really need to be connecting with organizations and agencies so that we're more included in climate solutions. The challenge is, sorry, Alexa, stop. Oh, I didn't start anybody's Alexa through it. Adult education is underfunded, and depending on what city or state you're in, I know that climate action work is also, even now with the incredible stuff going on federal funding, it doesn't mean that in your local region or in your local program that you have enough funding. So there's that is always an issue. So the next section is on starting climate conversations. I think, again, this might be things that you've already talked about or you're really familiar with, but in my experience, people voice their feelings as thoughts. I think that's pretty common with people in our culture, right? We have a feeling, but we don't say, I have a feeling, I'm feeling scared, I'm feeling overwhelmed. We say, that's not going to work because this is more acceptable than this. But the reality is, climate is, you know, that's a pretty overwhelming topic, as we all know. And there's a lot of pushback when you try to bring things up, in my experience. So things that I have found helpful are the local data on climate events. Again, we're lucky in California that there's a lot of really excellent local data. Asking learners what they want to focus on, and of course, focusing on solutions and local solution groups. So what I've, you know, these are sort of things that I've found helpful over the years. in my general advocacy work and in doing the work specifically around adult education and climate is just, you know, like Mr. Rogers said, I always look for the helpers. I look for where and how I can connect with people. I don't have to agree with them on everything. I just have to have something in common with them in terms of a particular issue that we're working on together. So this is kind of how I've gone about doing this work, is just looking for folks with whom I have something in common and creating ways and spaces for us to connect and have conversations and work together. And creating opportunities for folks to share their strengths. Again, I really feel that everybody has strengths and everybody's strengths are important. So I think this might be something y'all are already aware of. I'm going to jump forward to the resources section. So I wanted just to show, these are some of the resources that I've worked with. And on the sustainability side, I want to, sorry, in here, let's see. Back to sharing. Right, sorry, I'm moving all my goodies around here. This is a wonderful resource that California has. I don't know if you have the equivalent of it. Can you all see my screen? It's saying it's disconnected from the server.
It looks, it's like grayed out. Oh yeah.
Okay, there we go. All right.
Slowly. There we go.
So this is county by county. It's listed alphabetically. So Alameda is where Oakland and Berkeley are. I'm sure you've heard of those communities. So you can, it'll offer you all kinds of ways to look at climate vulnerability. So and it'll look at it comparing to other parts of California. So for example, Alameda County is at high risk for sea level rise, violent crime, something that I think that people don't always think about. Again, I feel like your group, I'm sure does, I'm saying it out loud, is that there's an increase in violent crime with climate events, particularly extreme heat, but all kinds. So it goes into all kinds of details around that. Who's at risk in the county, like if there's a higher population of seniors or a higher population of folks that don't have certain levels of English skills, that puts them more at risk in climate events. So it's a really wonderful resource. And are you familiar with this resource, the Surging Seas one? Anybody? Yes, no? This is another great one that looks at rising seas. And something that I think about a lot is like where it impacts with how people are building and dealing with housing. Like if they're, I just kind of wonder, like, why do you even build affordable housing next to the water? But people do it, right? So these are big issues in the San Francisco Bay Area of who's building what and where, as we face rising seas are a huge issue here. So there's a lot of wonderful tools here. So folks in Florida, this is a national resource, not California. I might want to look at that. It's really, really good. And then also, my list here. Are you familiar with the Urban Displacement Project? So this was started by Berkeley, and it's now basically a global phenomenon. And it has maps of where displacement and gentrification are happening. And so something I like to look at is where and how all these different things combine, because that's where we're going to have the greatest problems. So I just think all these resources are wonderful if you're trying to make something happen in your particular place in Tallahassee or Boulder or whatever, to gather all this information when you're going to go and try to get people to work together on something, or if you're going to people that have some, possibility of creating solutions. All right, let me return to slideshow. I think we all know that partnerships are really, you know, they're the answer for me, right? Creating partnerships, whether it's on the individual level or organization to organization. Climate action plans. So this is something, this is the school where I taught at for so many years, San Mateo Adult and Career Education. Because I was leading Green Team and I know about climate action plans, I found a way for our Green Team to participate in the climate action plan for the county. But I think mostly people don't know about climate action plans, and climate action plan planner people do not think about adult education and don't think about it as a wonderful chance to reach out to adults in the community that their voices aren't being heard, and to create ways for them to be part of that planning, or if nothing else, to take their needs into consideration. So I have, in California, tried to encourage adult education administrators to find out about their local climate action plan and see if there's an opportunity for them to be included and to reach out to them. Where I have a connection, I've reached out to the climate action plan to ask them to connect with adult education. But in general, I don't see these two things hooking up very much, and I think they really need to. And I feel like there's a lot of potential here for high school students. To me, this would be a great high school student project to learn about what's happening with the local climate action plan and where they are in that process. So this is another biggie, right? Climate means more emergencies, something that I'm really aware of with the fire where my daughter was going to school, and the flooding. The flooding here in San Francisco was really, really bad last New Year's. I'm a renter, but it opened up a sinkhole in my driveway. It was a really real thing here that the city was not ready for in any way. So things that I think adult ed can do and sometimes is doing in response to this is some adult education programs offer CERT classes, the Community Emergency Response Team classes. Sometimes they're for adult learners, and then they also open up to the community, which I think is a great partnership. At Houston Community College, I don't recall anybody here being from Texas today. They've started this is a really wonderful thing to check into. They have this, they're calling it a resiliency center. And I love that term because I know that, you know, again, California is a climate leader, and mostly people know climate change is real here, or at least a lot of people do. Certainly Newsom does, but it isn't that way in every place, and there's a lot of political resistance. So I think it's really wonderful when we can find language that opens ears and opens doors. And I think that word resiliency is a wonderful word that we can and should be using. So the Resiliency Center includes emergency preparedness and resilient jobs, which in California we call green jobs, but in Texas they're calling resilient jobs. And if that makes it happen, then let's all use the word resilient, right? Let's use whatever works, in my opinion. I think you probably already know about Project WET. Lots of resources. This is a great program, Roots of Success. I feel like I don't really have time to get into it more, but it's a really amazing program started by a woman who's a professor here in the Bay Area. And it is environmental literacy and green jobs. It's in both English and Spanish. It works with folks in the justice system and outside of the justice system in schools. It's not free. A school or a part of the prison has to contract with Roots of Success, and I think it's not free. I know that. I don't know how much it is. It's not nothing. So that is what it is. You have to have the funding to have it, but it's a really outstanding program. And she's doing incredible work. More resources. So I've been having these Zoom conversations about every 2 months, if anybody would be interested in coming to one of them. And I also just started a newsletter. That's my email, and I'll put it in the chat. I've got a website, and I feel like I've talked for a long time. So does anybody have any questions or want to share something?
I just want to say that was really good, and we don't get to talk about adult education a lot in clean. I know I've said that before, but it's really a new perspective for us, I think. So it's just really good to hear about all these programs and projects we might not be familiar with.
Yeah, something I think, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was wondering, when you're working with adult learners and teaching about climate change, what are the most common concerns you hear from the adult learners? Like, what are they most interested in or most worried about?
Sometimes this sounds like a really basic thing, but I feel like people stress a lot about how to recycle. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of I think I'm guessing most people here know how recycling unfolded, and that it unfolded in kind of a uncool way, where it is, of course, incredibly hard to know how to recycle what is recycled in your community. And I feel like there's a lot of right, wrong energy around recycling, and approval, disapproval, and judgment. And so oftentimes conversations literally start with that. But I hear a lot of, I would say, also larger, deeper concern about the future from students. And I think statistics and sort of my experience does show there's a lot of, so statistically, Latinos are the group that are most impacted by climate change and most interested in dealing with it. I have a lot of statistics on that if anybody's interested. I do hear a lot from Latino students, immigrants from, Spanish-speaking countries, or not, also Brazil, Latin America. But I hear from students all over a lot of deep concern and just not knowing where to start and what to do. Eric, do you have a question? I can't hear you.
Yep, thank you. Hit the button. Thanks so much. I'm also from the Bay Area, from Oakland, grew up here, so I'm really familiar with a lot of the resources and kind of the interplay between like the resilience hubs and various projects. And I guess my question, because I come from a background of working initially in library systems. So I did maybe 7-10 years of library work in my undergrad years, and a little bit out of college, and then moved into science museum world. It's Chabot Space and Science Center in Oakland Hills. I'm still there about 25 years with the organization, and then recently with another group that does professional learning for teachers. So I'm just thinking about your thoughts on community-based climate education, because I know one of our colleagues, Don Haas, does like science in the virtual pub, which is a great online, opportunity. And then we have these calls every week, which are awesome. If not always accessible. I'm thinking about like thoughts on in-person venues, like these resilience hubs seem like an opportunity. As you say, I think that word is really poignant too, and it reaches across the political spectrum in a really nice way, because we all want to be resilient in the event of challenging issues like climate change. I think library systems, science centers, even churches. I know Lynn Pinder is involved with the faith-based group, so thanks for hosting this, Lynn. Just other thoughts on venues, the types of places that we might reach a broad swath of the community, especially those that are at risk, as you've also mentioned, like the ones that are most vulnerable, might have the least bandwidth or least level of awareness of the problem, and yet are the most in need of services, and sort of, just the idea that came up, and it's kind of, sorry, I'm talking a lot, but making connections. The COP 28 is starting up this week, and loss and damages was a huge issue for the global South in particular. Most impact is the same thing in our communities, right? In the United States, the most impacted communities of color, lower on the socioeconomic spectrum. How do we reach them effectively and feel like, engaging them in the political process, and like the ECAPs that you were mentioning with cities? So just thinking about maybe a larger question for the team here is the best venues, and maybe it's all the above. I don't know, but any thoughts on people's experiences with venues and where to deliver and where to reach a broad spectrum of our community?
Well, I know you want to hear from everybody, but I'll just offer you a couple things. You should definitely reach out to Oakland Adult School. Oakland Adult School, Dr. Kim Jones is the director, and he's really open to all this and has come to some of my meetings. So I think he'd be open to connecting with you. You can email me for more info. And also in California, we have California Climate. My daughter was in this program last year. I got to get the right term. It's the California Climate Action Corps. It's the one started by Newsom. And then now I know Biden has started a national one that I think may have been partly modeled off the California one. So they have they have different cohorts across the country, but they have a really big one in Oakland because my daughter was in it last year. So you should really be connecting with them. There's a ton happening in Oakland. I think sometimes people aren't connected to each other, but feel free to email me so I don't take up more time.
Great,
I know there's, two other questions. Scott?
Oh, thanks. Got just sort of more basic information, just thanks for introducing this question about adult learning in this topic. It's sort of basic with how whatever curriculum adult learners do, how does this fit into that? I mean, I guess I'm wondering, you mentioned GED requirements, so they might have science education requirement where that fits or something. I don't know how it fits in. How flexible are the teachers in incorporating climate work? I'm just thinking that some of our teachers in Florida don't want to put climate in there because they got other things that they want to cover. I don't know how flexible you are.
Yeah, so, and I have family and friends in Florida, and I lived there for a little while. Yeah, so there's different, adult ed has federal and state funding and components to it. I think that in general, in teaching in adult ed, and my sense is more than adult ed, there's a huge amount of burnout in teaching as a field. And there was a lot of job loss through the pandemic, and there's still job loss going on. I think a lot of teachers do not want to make their own curriculum. I'm one of those people that likes to rebuild my own wheel. A lot of people don't want to. They want given curriculum. And there is, I think, so for example, Los Angeles is the biggest adult school in California. It is gigantic. They are working on creating curriculum for adult ed. It's sort of like when LA does stuff, the rest of California will use it, just like when Texas makes a textbook, sometimes the rest of the country uses it. There is a big need for a curriculum that incorporates it, and I think it would be purchased. So the curriculum that I'm making, I think probably will get used by somebody. I wish I would get some money out of making it. I think the people that make curriculum and sell it can make some money. I think that the big schools will buy it. LA is, I've had meetings with them. They're looking for curriculum right now for both the GED high school diploma path and ESL. I really think it's perfect timing for curriculum writers to do it, and it will get purchased. Does that answer your question? Sort of.
Yeah, sort of. So that sounds like there's flexibility in how teachers could use this, both for the GED track and the ESL track.
Yeah, there's also something called EL Civics, English Learner Civics. That's a federal thing where when schools do EL Civics, they get some money. So they're very motivated to do it. And one of the EL Civics component is an environmental component. So whatever people can create for that, schools will be motivated to use. I'm not a GED teacher, so I'm not as versed in all of those things. Lynn, I see your hands up and you're a GED person. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say, from a GED instructor perspective, it's a great interdisciplinary curriculum approach where you may not teach science, but you can incorporate these elements into a writing lesson for, language arts, or you can definitely hit on some newspaper articles and create a social studies assignment. And so, I think that's the push to have more conversations like this where we're connecting with the K through 12 experts to kind of help us do a better job of making those connections so that people aren't so kind of tunnel vision to say, oh, it's climate change, that's science, I don't teach science, but understanding that regardless of whether or not you teach science or not, it's going to affect you across the board. And it has many different ways for us to be able to expose learners, young people and adults, about it. And so it really is a great way, a great introduction and a professional development opportunity to really help those teachers kind of see the bigger picture. And so that's actually what I try to do on my end.
And Carrie?
I first just want to say thank you for presenting. I think this is a really interesting topic that, like other people have said, really goes under the radar. When I was living in DC, I had the opportunity to volunteer at the Carlos Rosario International School, which is a charter school aimed at adult immigrants. And they have like a GED program, but they also have an ESL program. They have a ton of stuff going on there, and they're great. They have a career learning. Anyway, my question for you is, as someone who does work with developing lessons and curricula for the high school level, we already include sort of tips and tricks to help students with special needs or students who are learning English as a second language. And I'm wondering what kinds of things, since you've said that's a place where you look sometimes to pull from, what other kinds of things could be included that would be a kind of like tip and trick to adjust a high school level piece for an adult classroom?
So for the English learners, are you already including like links to ESL dictionaries or word families, things like that?
We do that, and we also offer a lot of suggestions from, I think it's WIBA and sheltered learning.
I think just things in the section where you have like your things to think about, questions or whatever, kind of beginning with the presumption that people know a lot. Maybe questions that build on that idea, like what's the time when you or the questions that are drawing from experience and knowledge, because adults have so much experience and knowledge. So creating questions that open that up, it might work for some high schoolers too. That would be useful.
Thank you.
Any other? I'm definitely gonna, I haven't had a chance to look through the chat, but I will copy it so I can look through it and read it. Because are we finished at 11?
Yeah, and Eric in the IC in the chat was just wondering if you could drop your contact info one more time in there.
Definitely.
Because I've been watching it, and it seems like Lynn was doing a lot of link sharing, and that was a lot of the activity on the chat, so shouldn't be too much. But yeah, are there any other questions or anything? I don't know, Lynn, if you have any other thoughts too that you want to share, since you're working in the space. Final thoughts or anything?
No, I just thought that it would be a great way to make the connection. And I'm steady learning and researching. And when I came across Cynthia, she's like many steps ahead of where I am working towards this goal. But as she said, you know, and I always think about this, you know, we're teaching the parents of the children that you're teaching. And so, you know, that old saying that parents are the first teachers, it's still true. And so if we have a coordinated way of not only reaching the young people, but reaching the parents as well, it makes sense for us to talk to each other. It makes sense for us to share ideas and to share ways for us to actually approach the issues. And so I saw this as an opportunity to do that.
And sort of to what Lynn was saying and to Carrie's question, I'm thinking, I kind of love to see, like, I need to think about this too of mine. Things where we ask people, who are your learning partners, right? Because your learning partner isn't necessarily your classmate. Your learning partner might be your cousin or your grandma or your neighbor. I just really think that the answer is so much of what we're facing right now as a culture and a planet is about connection. And understanding that it's through connection and community that we're gonna, you know, make it through this eye of the needle. So I think that questions that encourage people to look for and appreciate and build on and work with the connections they have is important.
Absolutely. And I just again want to say how important I think it is to have this representation in clean, just because so many of us are focused on K-12. And I know a lot of people that work in the informal education space are hoping to see more representation in clean for that area. And this is just, it's just so good to have you speak about, you know, the education that's flying under the radar that we probably have never talked about on one of these calls before. So thank you again, Cynthia, for being here, and Lynn for connecting her with us. Cynthia, you're welcome to join us at any time. And yeah, thank you both. Thank you everyone for being here.
Hey, I missed the organization, Cynthia, that you mentioned that does the translation. Can you put that in the chat for us too, please?
It's Climate Cardinals. I don't have the website memorized,
Okay.
but just look up Climate Cardinals.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Day, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Cynthia.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Lynn.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, Cynthia. And yeah, Cynthia, join us in the future. We'd love to have you back.
I will. Am I on your email list now? Or just look up go to the website?
Let me put it in before we jump off here. It is on our website. There's a big like join the Clean Network button, but this is the direct link in the chat. So that will take you to the registration page, and you can just put in your name and email under the subscribing to Climate Literacy Network, and then you will be on our email list and get the reminders about the calls every week. So
I will do. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.